A Fijian professor of governance says Frank Bainimarama's court sentence is a joke after Fiji's former leader avoided jail in a corruption case. Frank Bainimarama was given an absolute discharge in a packed magistrates' court in Suva after last week being convicted of perverting the course of justice. The 69-year-old was sentenced alongside suspended police chief Sitiveni Giliho, who was given a 1,500 Fijian dollar fine and without conviction. Alicia Foon spoke with USP Governance and Social Studies professor Vijay Naidu.
It is surprising. The sentencing is like the minimalist kind of approach, but the magistrate has been sympathetic to both the former Prime Minister and the former police commissioner. I don't know if some kind of deference or what, because she's the one, if you recollect, had acquitted them of all charges, and the referral by the Chief Justice who found them guilty back to the magistrate's court has then given her the authority to make the decisions regarding the sentencing. As I anticipated, I did not expect the magistrate to sentence them for the maximum of, 10 years, case of Bainimarama, 5 years, in the case of Giliho. But what the sentence now is quite farcical because, these persons are found guilty and they are given sentences that, to say the least, is ludicrous, So, he's scot-free. Also that there will be no conviction against his name, so which means that he can stand in the next election.
Do you believe this was a fair and just process?
Well, I don't think it was particularly fair process from the perspective of the prosecution, but from the prosecution of the defending lawyer, Bainimarama and Giliho, this was a very satisfactory outcome for them. So depending on which side of the political spectrum you are sitting on in Fiji, you'll decide on whether the decision or the processes and the decisions were biased or not. My own view is that it's ridiculous, all this time taken up charging them and convicting them and then sentencing them to, what is a joke, really. Is actually quite mind-boggling. And it's quite apparent that the case actually shows that there is a rule for the powerful, influential people in the country and those who are disadvantaged.
What does this mean for other leaders going forward and people of power, like you mentioned?
Yeah, well, the thing is that we have had former prime ministers sentenced and convicted, serving terms in jail or as extramural prisoners. So Mahendra Chaudhry has done his time, so has Garase. So I think much depends on, who the magistrate is and what factors they take into account. Of course, like everywhere else, we have magistrates and magistrates. Their decisions can vary quite considerably. I don't think Bainimarama is out of the woods yet because there is a whole string of other charges that he'll face in the coming months. Who knows if the magistrate's court and the magistrates are different or he's different in the next case, then he may be imprisoned. Personally, my view is that when you think about other public servants who have been, and politicians who have been jailed for a minimum of 12 months for abuse of office and conflict of interest and corruption, this outcome in that context is not particularly fair in terms of, the sentencing, and I think reflects fully on Fiji's judiciary.
The magistrate's reasoning was poor health, that he could have a heart attack in prison?
Well, look, Mr. Lasanya Garase was not a well man when he was sentenced, and he sentenced a little more than the 12 months that he was sent in for. I think this is very special treatment myself, I think there are issues around that. Contextually speaking, he got the majority of votes as an individual politician in the December 2022 general election. And since this court case began, there have been a number of gatherings where his supporters, both civilian, military and naval, have turned up to show their support for him. And one wonders whether that context also influenced the magistrate's decision.
He is very popular, like you mentioned. People are rooting for him and do support him.
Well, yes and no. I don't think the majority indigenous Fijian voters support him anymore. The ethnic minorities in the country certainly support him, and with overwhelming majorities. It's not all rural people. There is an ethnic dimension to this.
And I want to mention as well that he was sentenced alongside suspended police chief Sitiveni Ngilio, who was given a fine of 1,500 Fijian dollars without conviction as well. So what does this mean for Ngilio's future?
Well, it is all very farcical, But, I don't think Ngilio would ever be appointed in the police force. And I can't speak for the military. He's got his own proclivities, so I wouldn't know. But under the current government, I doubt it very much that he'd ever get any position in the public service or in the statutory body. I don't think he's actually employable, full stop.
Fijian state prosecutors are appealing the sentences.